OK, it's time to go through your Tuesday morning newspapers. We're joined this morning by the consumer expert, Kate Hardcastle, and the former minister turned royal author, Norman Baker. Very warm welcome to both of you. Kate, let's start with you. Sir Keir Starmer on about 50-60% of the papers this morning, following on from his claims yesterday that he was going to show the Prime Minister what integrity looked like. What do you make of it, and what does the Mirror make of it on their front page?
The Mirror is obviously very sympathetic to the speech, a 9-minute speech. I think we've got this very challenging situation because we know that agonising decisions, agonising situations were the reality for so many of us throughout that period. And it is absolutely, I completely understand why anyone who've had to go through such challenging situations, losing family members and not being with them, would want to see this brought to account and absolute clarity on what leaders and leaders of the opposition were doing at that time. That said, on an international scale, we do look like a country that's lost the plot. We are constantly discussing whether or not leaders, opposition leaders, have been eating curries, eating cake, eating whatever else, playing some board games, I don't know. And we're losing focus. We have a cost of living crisis. We have got a challenging time coming up in the autumn too. I mean,
so what's the solution? We ignore it. I mean, I think Pippa Crerar has got this interview, an exclusive with Starmer inside the Mirror today, and he's running through his defence, saying they're going to supply this document to Durham Police, which will show that work was ongoing whilst he was eating this curry.
That's right.
OK, we may feel frustrated that there are more important things to talk about, but what's the answer? We just ignore it?
No, I just feel that I am sure a lot of your viewers feel the same, and I think you've had that tweet in this morning as well, that this is really taking over the agenda, and that's the issue, isn't it? We should have leaders in which we should trust. We should have leaders who set rules to follow and lead by example, but at the same time, months and months and months of focus have been moved off topical issues that really affect
I get that, but we've still got to resolve this. So you've got one guy who the leader of the opposition believes is lying through his teeth and should be prosecuted and should do the noble thing and resign. Then it turns to him and says, oh, well, put your money where your mouth is. You're now accused of the same thing. I mean, it is called politics.
Of course it is, and it's spin, and it's all of the other things as well. All I'm saying, Eamon, is imagine you're a small business owner and your life's been wrecked not only by maybe some Brexit regulations, but then 2 years of on and off lockdown.
Yeah, I get that, but this still has to be resolved.
It has to be resolved, but if it then takes 3 months to do, which, by the way, if you were in a business, nothing would take that long, it is incredibly frustrating to see this dominate the front page
I want to bring in Norman Baker, because let's not forget, you were the man who came out squeaky clean out of all of the MPs during the expenses scandal, not a single fiddled expenses, and you know what integrity looks like. Do you see integrity in the eyes of Sir Keir Starmer, or the fact that Angela Rayner was there, the fact that beers were bought en masse for a pre-organised event, does that make it live?
What else can he do? It's a roll of the dice, surely, Norman. He's if he does get the fixed penalty, he's gambling that he doesn't get one. Look, he's going to look great.
Gambling is right, and I agree, actually, with Kate, that isn't the most important issue, but we are where we are, and it has to be sorted out. The fact of the matter is that because he challenged the Prime Minister, he's got to be held to the same standard himself, and therefore, politically, apart from anything else, he had to take the action he did yesterday, which is to say, I will resign if I'm found guilty. But this is raising the stakes in a kind of poker game, because let's say he isn't found guilty and the police issue no fixed penalty notice. That leaves the Prime Minister looking in a very poor position where he's not taken the same position himself, and he looks even more scuzzy than he has done to date. If, however, Keir Starmer does resign because there is a fixed penalty notice issued, then where's that leave the Prime Minister who's had one issued and not resigned? So I think in some ways, both ways, Keir Starmer wins, although wins in inverted commas, because in one of the situations he loses his job.
Is he indirectly interfering with a police investigation?
Yeah, undermining.
I don't think so. I don't think so. What I do think about the police is they need to get a move on with this. I mean, this has gone on for a very long time, and we've heard that there may be more instances of fines issued in respect to Downing Street. Well, I don't know how long the police take to investigate these matters, but it's been going on months and months and months. It seems to be a rather an open and shut case. I mean, there's an offence being committed, or there hasn't been. And we really ought to get this thing wrapped up by the police, both in terms of the Met Police and the Prime Minister and the Durham Police, within frankly, a few days.
Yeah.
It really shouldn't be dragging on. There's no reason for it to drag on.
So what if he doesn't get the fixed penalty notice? Where does this leave Boris Johnson?
it leaves him looking even more vulnerable and even more disreputable, frankly, than he has done to date. And by the way, although I totally agree with Kate that the issue has been to some extent about the Prime Minister behaving in a way that other people didn't, and people feel very strongly about that, I think the other issue, frankly, is he's lied to Parliament. And as a former parliamentarian, that's the thing that worries me. You cannot have ministers lying to Parliament.
But
the
has Sir Keir Starmer not lied to Parliament in the sense that, you know, he said he's done nothing wrong, but yet it's been proven that Angela Rayner was there and that this was a large gathering? I mean, you know...
Well, he'll have to respond to that if that's proven to be the case. But, I mean, what the Prime Minister said, for example, without going into the nitty-gritty too far, is that he wasn't at parties and he was. So, I mean, I think there's more open and shut in terms of the Prime Minister's statements to the House. But, you know, let's get the police sorting this out once and for all, independently, analytically, and get the whole thing put to bed within a couple of weeks.
And just before we move on to the next story, who would you see as his successor if he does go? Lisa Nandy being touted as a possible...
Well, Rachel Reeves, Lisa Nandy, but... there's not a huge choice. I mean, Andy Burnham is probably the choice of people,
well,
but he's not even in Parliament. He's
okay.
in Manchester.
Kate, let's go to the cost of living crisis. Front page of the Daily Express, and you've got the Prime Minister saying, I will strive night and day to level up Britain. We've heard it all before, have we not?
Yeah, I was going to say too much, too little, too late. The reality has struck and households are struggling, and we're heading up to this incredibly challenging situation in autumn, and I don't say that to be a scaremonger, but that's a reality with another fuel cap increase to come in. Inflation is showing no signs of exacerbating at all. So we are in this reality of households do not know how they are going to get through. And there is no clarity in any of the messaging here on the front of the Express on how it's going to work.
What makes me angry about this headline is that they had their chance with the spring budget, the mini statement, and nothing happened. All the opportunities to do it, and they can talk about, we've done this, we've done that. They've done very little at the end of the day. And people not only can't afford things, but they are frightened about the future.
The emotional impact is so severe as well. People having to deal with that reality day in, day out after the 2 years we've been through. That's what we can't forget here. Every country pretty much is going through a period of cost of living crisis, particularly pertaining to the fact we've been through the pandemic. Of course, economics show that that's the scale, but it's also a catalyst for change. Other territories are saying, right, OK, we've got to reinvest. This is the time to do it. We've got to put the cash in here. We've got to make sure people feel comfortable to spend, because spending will help the economy thrive. And we've got to make sure the jobs are out there. Just take any measure. The houses they were meant to build, 300,000 houses, new houses. I think we've got 216. It isn't where we need to be.
But there's no money in the cupboard, is there?
Well, there could be money in the cupboard. It could be a windfall tax on the energy companies for a start, because they're making absolute fortune.
Right, Norman. So why isn't there? I mean, we will ask this question all the time, and we're told that it will put them off investing in the future, whatever. But I always look, they've got to go where the resources are, where the oil is, whatever. So they can't go anywhere else.
No, it puts them off investing. I mean, that's a ludicrous argument for people to make.
But they're already disproportionately taxed as a sector, more than any other sector in industry, because of this reason. And they also would argue that, I think it was 2 years ago, I think BP posted record losses. So, you know, whatever they're recouping
do you not think people, ordinary citizens, aren't disproportionately taxed?
No, but, not...
Well, you know, so I think they can afford to be more disproportionately taxed than the
BP
rest
and Shell are not short of money. I mean, they're rolling in it. They've even said themselves they're rolling in it. You've also got a situation where, although it's been drawn to the Chancellor's attention, tax loopholes for the very, very, very rich in this country have not been closed. They're making quite a lot of money, thank you very much, at the moment. So, of course, there's limited money in the Treasury, but there are places they can go to find it. And in the meantime, as Kate says, people are suffering out there. Give you an example of what might happen coming up shortly. Every year, automatically, there is a rise in rail fares based on the RPI rate in the summer. Now, unless the government does something about that, rail fares will go up 10%, the next rise. I mean, we can't have this sort of thing going on.
Yeah, no one will be using trains, everybody in cars.
Meanwhile, the Duke of Sussex yesterday launched a sustainable travel initiative. You couldn't make it up, could you? So tell us more about this. This is the front page of the Daily Telegraph.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, you couldn't make it up, because you know, of all the people in the world, Prince Harry is probably in the top 1% for carbon emissions, because aviation is far and away the most polluting activity you can engage in as an individual.
He's also got a big platform, and a platform from which he can encourage people.
Yes, but he can't encourage people who's being hypocritical himself.
So, really, do you think that he has to live a carbon-neutral life to say to people that they need to try and be green?
I think he took 4 private jets in 11 days.
There are far worse examples out there. I think
No, but he
really
can't preach. I'm sorry. The hypocrisy meter just goes off the scale
so it's
with
better
this
that
one.
he doesn't acknowledge that there's a problem and raise the subject.
Get his backside off private jets.
No, he's an
Him
easy
and her.
target. He really is an easy target. I think he's just being put up there as a target. That's not fair. There are
What,
so
that he
many
doesn't
worse
use
culprits.
private jets?
No, I'm not saying... I have no idea.
But he
if it's
does. We all have
travel
an idea.
schedule.
And then he can sit and tell everybody else, don't get on your Jet 2 or your 2E plane or whatever. Meanwhile, I'll scoot around the world in a private jet.
So we can never discuss anything that we have fallen foul of our Simon.
Well, we can take a vote on it. You can be gullible and listen to him. You can be gullible and listen to him. But it makes me throw up personally. Norman?
Well, I mean, I'm afraid Prince Charles did the same. I mean, Prince Charles also takes private jets, as did Prince Andrew. And there is a difficulty if you're going to lecture the world about the climate. And Prince Charles actually does believe in the climate and tackling climate change.
So does
I know
Harry.
he does. I think Harry does.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is they undermine their own case by their own behaviour. And I'm sorry, all they need to do is take commercial flights. If they want to go around the world, take commercial flights, not private jets.
OK, simple. Let's talk about protesters, Kate. Now, this is the set to be announced in the Queen's speech today, new powers under the Public Order Bill. How do you clamp down on guerrilla protesting without curbing the basic right to protest? And there are people who really worry that this is infringing British citizens' liberty.
And that's the dilemma that's been discussed in The Guardian today, and I don't think there's a resolution out of it either. They've certainly been keen to highlight Priti Patel saying that we will give the police the powers they need to clamp down on this outrageous behaviour, and showing her having a demonstration of being cuffed and the type of procedure that would be put in place. Obviously, a lot of this inflammatory because it's come through recent challenges where we've seen the Extinction Rebellion, when I can speak type, going out there and causing absolute chaos for people, getting in the way of people trying to get to work. And, of course, there's a lot of sympathy and empathy for the fact that people should be able to get about their daily business. But at the same time, we need to be able to have that freedom of opportunity to go out and bring focus to things that don't get discussed. How many debates have been brought about because people have gone out there and made it their passion to be able to go out and bring it to attention? So there is no resolution in this, and it'll be interesting to hear what's been said today.
OK, but you're the one who's saying something's got to be done about our bills, our cost of living crisis, our energy bills and whatever. Well and good, but now's not the time to be protesting about fuel and how we extract it, or not. I just put it to you.
Because there's a direct suggestion that if we need to curb bills, we can't then take forward progressive steps in being better businesses. I wholeheartedly agree. You can do both.
OK.
And Norman, I just want to get your take on all this because, I mean, we touched on the fact you're a former MP, former member of the Lib Dem
Former Home Office
Conservative
Minister, actually.
Coalition. Indeed, yes, in government. But obviously there's a bit of a resurgence of your former party. Still a member of the party? Or?
Yes.
Yeah, so the Lib Dem
Notwithstanding my...
did really well in the local elections last week. They're talking about the blue wall being smashed down. Where do the Lib Dems stand on these particular powers when it comes to public order?
I think the Lib Dems are very sceptical about them, as indeed are members of the House of Lords, because these powers that are coming in the Queen's speech, apparently, were thrown out by the House of Lords earlier this year on a cross-party basis, because there is a difficulty if you're going to argue that we are a democratic country, that we're different from Putin's Russia, where they've been clamping down on demonstrations. In this country, the right to demonstrate is a fundamental right. And many advances in law in this country have come about from public demonstrations. So I'm very wary about the fact that demonstrations will be curbed because the government of the day doesn't like them. Now, I'm not in favour personally of people blocking transport and shutting down motorways and so on. I think that's unwise. But I think it's even more unwise to start telling people what they can and cannot do in terms of demonstrations. That's a very slippery slope.
Guys, what do we think about the Queen today? I mean, obviously people, concerned about her health and, she won't be there to deliver the Queen's speech today. Norman, front page of The Sun says,
yes,
crowning out.
Yeah, not our best pun, actually, but look, I mean, let's give her a break. She's 96 and she's not been very well. I mean, And if she wants to take a freebie on this because you're not very well, that's fine by me. And if Charles can turn up and give the speech, well, you know, to be perfectly honest with you, it's not the greatest action that the Queen can take anyway, because she's got to read out a list of bills she probably doesn't agree with, written for or by the government. I mean, it's not a great act, is it?
You say give her a break. I haven't read any criticism, to be fair, of her bowing out of tomorrow. I have to say, though, you are the first person to call this Charles Regency. You mentioned it a few weeks ago on this programme, and you said we're beginning to see this. Yeah. And now it's being widely reported. Do you think this is the way it's going to go now?
Yes, I mean, officially, Charles and one or two others are councillors in state, I think the term is, where the Queen can delegate the responsibility to them to undertake her duties. And as I say, she is 96, and Charles will presumably be king at some point in the not-too-distant future. So, you know, let him have a go now if he wants to.
Do you think a regency, Kate, is more palatable?
You love that word, don't you? It's as if you've gone back to A-level history, you know.
Okay, all right.
Regency.
But I'm just... Or versus an abdication. I don't see why there's a problem with abdication. We've seen it happening in Spain. We've seen it happening in the Netherlands. Normally, no other countries where they've had them.
Retirement,
but we're not into it here. We're not into it. It's almost... You can't say it. You're anti-monarchy.
We're not into it.
But is a regency more acceptable?
The Queen has made it that we're not into it because she says she will just keep on working. But I think if Mom was wise, she would sit in and watch Loose Women during the day or something, you know, just to pass.
You're highly recommending that programme, are you?
Yeah, I'm just saying.
On a Monday.
Maybe she's watching you, Eamon, now.
We're going to have a very interesting period of change, aren't we? There was certainly noise over the weekend in the press about the idea that William will be called William, and those changes in terms of some of the protocols, and I think it's going to be a really interesting time. But we mustn't ever forget just how that monarchy has put us on the world stage and really given us some exceptional opportunities as well.
But also, as a business person, I mean, it's called the firm. And, you know, now we're seeing various managers in the firm, as you say.
It's like Succession.
Succession. It is. It's like Succession.
It has a touch, doesn't it? And I think that's it. When you start to hear the different voices, it's not always blended, it's not always harmonised, and that's what we've heard over the last year or so.
Yeah, but like you say, Isabel, I can't see any problem with different people in different roles. And as you say, let's not underestimate just what the monarchy means to this country abroad. I mean, I do laugh.
Soft power.
I do laugh when people say, "Oh, let's get rid of it," whatever. I sort of think, so what would all the tourists do? What are they coming to London for?
Absolutely. You know, if you go and see any representation of the UK internationally, you can bet your pound it's going to have a crown, it's going to have that element to it.
Yeah.
It's a big part of our makeup and our history.
Sadiq
It doesn't mean it can't evolve
No.
and move forward. It just is about respecting what was.
Sadiq Khan's out in New York at the moment, trying to get people to come and visit London. And, you know...
I could have done that gig.
What?
I could have done that gig.
You could, yeah. I don't know if he's pushing the West End or whatever, but surely everything the Royals and the Jubilee this year,
that will be
that has to be a massive thing.
Yeah.
Apparently we've lost about $2.5 billion from America alone in terms of lost tourism.
Oh, we're going to come on to the high street later because it's going to be mentioned today, but we've got to talk about the shopping and just how important it is.
Give us a taster.
Well, it's coming up in the Queen's speech, and apparently, you know, we've got all the answers now, and I remember discussing this with you over a decade ago.
Are these your answers?
Pretty much, but, you know, it's not just that. It's like the short-termism of it and the fact that we're still not identifying that every single place across the UK has got history, got legacy, got its own DNA. You can't have a blanket one-size-fits-all.
OK, hold that thought. And we'll be discussing that in 40 minutes' time when Norman and Kate come back again. For the moment, guys, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
OK, the time is 6:52. We're going to bring you up to date with the latest headlines. And as we were just discussing, the Prince of Wales is to read the Queen's speech for the first time as Her Majesty experiences so-called mobility problems. It will be the first time the Queen has missed the state opening of Parliament in almost 60 years. And the Duke of Cambridge will also be at the ceremony.
Consumers are tightening their belts amidst the rising cost of living. Latest figures from the British Retail Consortium show total sales fell last month for the first time in over a year.
The Mayor of London has met with Hillary Clinton in New York on his tour to boost London's tourism and tech industries. Sadiq Khan attended a meeting with the former US presidential hopeful to discuss issues facing the capital, as well as recovery from the coronavirus pandemic.
He's wasting his time there because Hillary is ours. Hillary is the Chancellor of Queen's University
There
in
you go,
Belfast,
she's-
and her and Bill have a suite in the Europa Hotel
Oh, they do?
called the Clinton Suite. So if you want to stay, go to the Europa Hotel, the most bombed hotel in the world, and go and ask for the Clinton Suite.
Yeah, exactly. He's drumming up
Goodness
business
knows
for
what went on in there.
UKPL. Oh, let's not go there.
Do you know, he
Anyway.
was so... I remember one night going down Great Victoria Street in Belfast, and there's a tree planted in my name, right?
Right.
Which was broken. Someone's chopped it down.
So many
and then
gags.
they peed all over
Oh,
it, right?
gosh,
so
you've gone there.
anyway, so I was inspecting the remnants of my tree,
Mm-hmm.
and I looked across the road, and there was all this kerfuffle going on, and flashbulbs and all sorts of things, and it was Bill Clinton. He just got out of a car, and there he was, sauntering in, going into the Clinton Suite.
How funny.
Where he
Solo or?
he obviously doesn't even have to pay for it in there.
Very
But he's
nice.
Have you ever met him, Norman?
I have. An amazing charisma, actually.
Incredible.
I mean, he comes
Film
in the,
star.
He comes in the room and he fills the room with charisma. It's quite
But
extraordinary.
Hillary
Yeah.
apparently the same, and you loved it when you met her. Great interviewee.
Hillary,
Bill Clinton's warm-up act.
you're what?
I was Bill Clinton's warm-up.
Please give
His
some
woman.
context.
His woman.
Context.
Warm up.
what they said-
That would be an exclusive, wouldn't it?
I interviewed Monica Lewinsky once, and she sarcastically said to me, "Why, have you met the president?" I said, "Yes, I have." I said, "But unlike you, I only shook his hand." So she had a good sense of humour about all of that.
So you were his warm-up act in what context?
So now you're asking.
We had a big entrepreneurial conference a few years ago,
Yeah.
and the funny and very true story, the front row in this auditorium of thousands of people was empty, and I didn't understand why. And then just before, because we weren't allowed to announce what time he was going on stage
Yes, yeah.
because of protocol and security, the front row started filling up with very recognisable faces, and I realised they weren't there for me. But for a moment, there was a crossover, and they did turn up for me. That was, Sting and...
Did you
everyone.
fancy him?
No.
You didn't find him charismatic?
I did, but that doesn't mean I fancy him. I've got a very...
No, I'm asking. Even I fancied him.
You did.
Not
Yeah,
a
he's very
musician,
charismatic.
musician
His
name.
music's
Yeah.
there to start with, it's a big thing.
Did he play the sax?
He didn't on stage. I don't know if he did later, but
I've
it
seen
wasn't
him
when
do
I was
that.
around.
He's a
Have
very
you?
talented musician.
Oh.